This program is made possible by the loyal financial support of the friends and partners of Family Policy Institute.
Good evening and welcome to Watchman on the Wall. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, my guest in the studio is Bruce Retief. Bruce, welcome to the studio and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Errol.
Now, you're here to talk about a movie that's going to be released over the Easter weekend called The Least of These. And you composed the music. You wrote the score for this movie. But we want to talk a little bit about this movie and the theme that is evangelism. So once again, welcome. Thanks for coming in to talk to us. But this movie is about a family, the Graham and Gladys Staines and their children that went to India for a number of years to go and minister to the lepers in that country. And Graham and his young sons are killed in India. It's a remarkable story. It's a tearjerker. It's inspirational. It's challenging. It's everything. And what was your experience being part of this movie?
Well, it was amazing because it's a true story.
Yes.
Yeah, so all the emotions and all the story ups and downs are all things that really happened, and it was an honor to work on it. I knew about the event when it happened 20 years ago, and so to actually get to work on the retelling of that story was a real honor. And as the film composer, it was very easy to draw on these emotions to do what I had to do, because the emotions were all real and they were all there.
Yes. Now, Stephen Baldwin stars in this movie as Graham Staines.
Yes.
And he, of course, is the brother of Alex Baldwin. Well, there's a whole lot of these brothers, the Baldwin brothers. They're well known. And I heard his testimony a couple of years ago when I was in Washington at a Values Voters Summit. He spoke there, shared his testimony, how he got saved through his maid that was coming to clean his house and share the gospel with her. Now, all of this puts the focus on evangelism. And I mean, the theme of this show is evangelism, because we look at the life of the Staines and what they went through and what they gave to honor God, to serve Him faithfully in a foreign country, and paying the ultimate price and giving their lives for this. And the remarkable thing is that Gladys Staines, after the murder of her husband and two young sons, decided to continue in India, staying on and serving those lepers faithfully. Yeah. It is remarkable.
Well, she really is a picture of Christian forgiveness.
Yes.
And grace. Not only did she immediately forgive the people who killed her husband and two sons, but she continued to work for them and to serve them.
And the question is, we have to ask ourselves, would we do that? If we were in similar circumstances, would we do that? Yeah. And that scripture comes to mind, Bruce, where Jesus says, you're not my servants unless you take up your cross and follow me. So taking up the cross speaks about crucifying self, yeah, and facing the suffering and the challenges of Jesus.
And that's the part we prefer not to think about or talk about or do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's why perhaps we're not seeing as much evangelism in South Africa as we should.
Yes.
Because, many people are saying, what's happening with the church? You don't see a lot of outreaches and evangelism. People are not going, you've got to come to church in order to hear the gospel, so people aren't going out. And Jesus said, go. So this
it's all a part of this me culture, where it's all about my comfort and my happiness, and that affects our evangelism. We're not willing to make ourselves uncomfortable.
Yeah, and what I love about this movie is challenges that. It challenged my wife and I when we watched it so much that we said we'd never complain again about anything. We serve God and we face challenges and hardships, but compared to this family and what they went through to serve the Lord, and for that woman to forgive the murderers of her husband, and it was a false allegation. Yeah. They were looking for a reason to attack them, the Hindu mobs in India, And they thought this man was, because people were getting saved, Hindus were getting saved, and their lives were being transformed. And they were saying, this can't be, you must be bribing them, paying them. And they were looking for something, but there was nothing. They couldn't understand that just pure love, the love of Jesus Christ, was changing people's lives.
Yes, that's right. And I think the level to which his love went was so beyond what most people would ever consider doing.
Yes.
And that is the power that caused people to be saved. That God used that to change these rural Indian people from abandoning their beliefs and following Christ, because they saw the evidence, they saw the love.
Correct, because if anybody knows anything about the caste system in India, so people that are lepers are as the movie's title says, the least of these. They are the untouchables. People don't touch them. People don't have anything to do with them. So they're outcasts.
Yeah.
And this family travels from Australia, which is a first world nation, to go to India and live in a rural village under very difficult circumstances and conditions.
Yeah.
And they serve these people faithfully.
Yeah.
I mean, it just screams, Jesus, the love of Jesus, that we can't really understand. And so this movie will challenge everybody that sees it.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage every single person watching this program to make sure that you go out and see the movie, The Least of These, starring Stephen Baldwin. The music and the composition of the music, Bruce Retief has written the music. He's traveled to India, to Europe, United States of America, to put all of this together, and you're going to hear in the next segment about it. But we want to show you the trailer of this movie so that you got a sense of what is the message of this movie. And the underlying message, the strong message, is serving Jesus Christ, giving your life to serve Him. Evangelism is the core of The Least of These. So watch this.
Tell me!
Leprosy is the veil behind which Staines operates. The tool he uses.
You bring me evidence of illegal conversion, I'll give you a permanent position.
One day I'll find the proof of him converting the tribals.
Who is he?
Staines. The law states that no person shall convert or attempt to convert any person from one religious faith to another. And yet not one missionary has been charged.
We can't make any mistakes. They have this law for a reason.
I know. We must pray.
Farmers are leaving their lands and families. But do the missionaries ever get the blame for this?
Actually, this sends out a good message. Teaches the Christians a lesson.
What does expendability mean?
And that's when you do something and some people think it doesn't matter. Write about the work, not about me.
Leave my children out of it.
Tell me!
You can still write the truth.
What is the truth?
The Bible says God created us from the dust of the earth. Dust for dust. Seek, and ye shall find.
You were talking about the truth, weren't you?
So fear, unfounded fear, prevents the people from doing good.
And what you do is good? What did he give you to convert?
You want the truth? Truth always seems to cost something.
Welcome back to the program. I'm speaking to Bruce Retief, who is a film composer. And Bruce has written the score for a movie called The Least of These, which is a remarkable, powerful movie that talks about the life of the Staines family that went to India to serve the lepers in that country. And Graham Staines and his two young sons were murdered brutally by Hindu mobs under false allegations but the wife and the daughter continued to serve those people. This movie will challenge you, will inspire you, and hopefully, Bruce, it will get people out of their churches, out of their pews, to go out and evangelize the lost, just like the Stains did.
We hope so, because the movie is a rebuke. It's a rebuke to people who are too comfortable in their faith.
Yeah, it will get you out of your comfort zone, that's for sure. Now, Bruce, you wrote the music for this movie, you composed the score, you traveled to India, Europe to record with different instruments, went to America to mix everything together, so it was quite a complicated and involved task. It took a lot.
It was.
But maybe you want to start by telling us, how do you write the music for a movie like this? How do you capture the emotions?
Yeah, well, so I wait usually for the film to be done, and then the director takes me through the film and tells me which scenes require which emotions, and then it's up to me to create those feelings with the music. So it's not easy,
of course,
because you have to write for a specific feeling or a specific emotion, and it can sometimes take a long time to get that right feel. You know? But it's very important. The audience come to watch a movie, they pay to be emotionally manipulated. So that's what the music does in a good way. It basically informs the audience how to feel throughout the movie and what they should be feeling.
Okay.
And so the music it's kind of like a secret weapon. It's most people, when they're watching a film, they don't really notice the music, but it's affecting them. They don't notice. They're allowed in because they don't hear it really.
Absolutely.
And then it affects their feelings, and that's what creates the whole film experience, is that you go there for this emotional roller coaster.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've actually watched a documentary where they showed clips of movies and the music, then they showed it without the music, and it's just like
falls flat.
Absolutely. It just does nothing without the music.
Or sometimes if you put different music there, it totally changes how you perceive what you're seeing.
Exactly. Well, I watched the movie, my wife and I, and the music was beautiful. I mean, it captured the emotions. It was haunting. It was a beautiful fit, and we're very proud. South African Bruce Retief wrote the score for this movie that's going to go worldwide. And Bruce, you were in New York recently with the director and the actors for the release of the movie.
That's right. So the New York premiere happened last week, and we had all the actors and the main players there. And then the film was released countrywide in the States on the 1st of Feb.
Okay.
And I heard that it's doing very well in the States.
Okay, and you're going to be acting as the distribution agent for this movie, The Least of These.
That's right.
And it's going to be released in South Africa over the Easter weekend.
That's right. So we'll be doing a premiere event just before the Easter weekend as well, where some of the actors and producers will be there. That'll be in Durban, and then thereafter it'll be released in selected cinemas around the country.
And how would people know which cinemas? How could they get that information?
Right, so if they just visit the website, which is on the screen, there'll be clear information there about where and when they can see the movie.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about this process. So you captured the mood, you watched the movie, the recording process. How do you get all the instruments and everything together?
All right, so everything starts in front of my computer at home, where I do a rough composition of the whole film, and then the chords and the melodies that I create there are then written down into notation form. In this case, I then flew to India to record the Indian guys, some fantastic flute and percussion players, and then taking that, we go to the orchestra in Europe, and they record exactly what the notes that I wrote down for them in Cape Town, and then in America is where we combine the Indian stuff with the European stuff, put it together, and made quite a unique score.
Truly a global effort.
Yes, 4 continents.
Is that music available?
Yes, so the soundtrack will be released in South Africa at the same time as the film.
Okay.
And we also had some artists, some Christian singers from America contribute some songs to the soundtrack as well, inspired by the movie. So we have Michael W. Smith, Toby Mac, those kinds of singers, Nicole Mullen, on the soundtrack CD as well, and that'll be released around about Easter.
Yeah, Bruce, so besides being a film composer, writing for the movies, you have a famous dad. Your dad is Bishop Frank Retief, that most of our viewers will recognize the name immediately. Bishop Frank Retief obviously was involved with the whole St. James Church massacre in 1993. It was all over the media, where terrorists ran into that church, St. James Church in Kenilworth in Cape Town. And a number of people were killed by that incident. The terrorists were caught. And during that time, your dad really led. He demonstrated great leadership, but also the love of Jesus Christ and the forgiveness that even in this movie is so key in this movie. Your dad chose to forgive those terrorists that came into his church and killed people.
Yes, I think one of the main or the interesting things about that was that although our church suffered so deeply at that time, the forgiveness that not only my dad but also the members who had been affected,
yes,
they showed this forgiveness publicly on the media, and that was broadcast around the world.
I know.
And so it was a real testimony to the gospel.
Yeah.
Even though we suffered, it was a great.
Yeah, I remember people struggled with that. Why would he forgive? There was a lot of discussion and debate in the media about forgiving this, but your dad did the right thing and is widely respected, highly respected. I'm one of his great fans.
So am I.
So we've got a video that shows your trip to India and the recording of the music there, and then in Budapest and the United States. So we want to show that. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk about the release of the movie and some other information. So watch this. Welcome back to the program. I'm speaking to Bruce Retief, who is a film composer. And Bruce has written the score for a movie called The Least of These that was released in New York a few weeks ago. It stars Stephen Baldwin, one of the Baldwin brothers, and a host of local Indian actors. It is a remarkable and inspirational movie that challenged me to the core, because it speaks about a family from Australia that traveled to India to live amongst the lepers, take care of them, show them the love of Jesus Christ. And ultimately, the father, Graham Staines, and his two young sons were murdered by Hindu mobs under false allegations. But the storyline will get you, it will challenge you. It is a tearjerker, Bruce. And again, I'm encouraging every single Christian in this country, when the movie is released over the Easter weekend, get out and see it. The website address is on the screen right now, so go to the website, get more information, watch the trailer if you missed it. But buy a number of tickets, get your friends and family, and go out and see that. We need to in this country, because evangelism, Bruce, is one of the things we're doing the least in the church at the moment. A lot of people agree with that, And perhaps this movie is going to inspire and encourage Christians to get out of the pews, out of the churches, and go share the gospel with the lost and the hurt and the broken. Do you think this movie will accomplish that?
I think so, if you let it in, if we allow it to challenge us. A lot of people, a lot of us, myself included, don't want to be uncomfortable.
Yes.
But I think it's difficult to ignore it when you watch a movie like this. And when you think about how Gladys, Graham's wife, who's now his widow, how she forgave, and not only forgave, but continued to serve the people in that community for a number of years with her daughter, the surviving daughter. You just can't imagine how we should continue living with these comfortable lives without, willing to step out of our comfort zone for the Lord. An example of how much they poured their lives out came from some of the actors who were some of the American actors who came to India to act in the film, and they were explaining how they actually, for some of the scenes, they worked with real lepers. Those lepers in the movie are real lepers in the area where Graham was working.
Wow.
And lepers' flesh actually dies, and it's rotten, and there's a smell of death around them. And one of the actresses said that she had to run out of the room at one point because she couldn't handle the smell of death, around her. And that was just for a few hours of her life. And the Staines family were there for 35 years.
35 years, they served that
living
community.
amongst those kind of conditions. And they did it selflessly and without hesitation.
Without complaining.
Yeah.
You know what stood out for me in the movie is that the Hindu agitators that were trying to find fault with this family for their work with the lepers. They were trying to find out why people were drawn to them, how people are getting saved, and they kept on making the accusation that they were bribing people, they were paying people, so they're looking for something. The thing that got me is that they couldn't understand the love of Jesus Christ. It escaped them completely. That this man and his family came from Australia, lived in very challenging conditions because of the love of Jesus Christ. That was it, and they couldn't understand it. They couldn't get that.
They couldn't. For them, there had to be some kind of personal gain other than that. So they, for example, they speculated that he would get paid for every person by Australia for every person that gets saved in India.
Yes.
So he would pay a little bit for the person to get saved and then get a whole lot more from Australia. So there had to be a business motivation.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't understand that Christ's love is enough motivation. And I think that's where spiritual blindness comes in. Your eyes have got to be opened before you can understand something like that.
So evangelism, it's a big call for it. As I travel around this country in the work I do, you speak to people and people complain. There's certain people will say, we don't get much of the church going out. What we do see a lot of is people being invited to church. So we have big buildings, fancy buildings, with great multimedia, very comfortable bands and smoke machines and lights, and so people go to church and they're being entertained and they're getting a great word and they're comfortable. I mean, let's be honest. It's comfortable to go and just have a great time in church and then go home and say, well, I've served the Lord. That isn't actually serving the Lord, because Jesus said, go and make disciples. He didn't say, come to church.
A great way to test where a church stands is how they spend their money. You just got to follow the money. If is money spent on evangelism? Is money spent on missions? Or is most of it going into the church infrastructure and, as you say, the smoke machines and the sound systems?
Yeah, and again, Stephen Baldwin, the Hollywood actor, part of the Baldwin brothers dynasty, his story, I mean, that also challenges you, because he shared that testimony that his maid, a Latino maid, shared her faith with him and his wife, and they got saved as a result of it. This man now is a powerful testimony in Hollywood because of a Latino maid. And he was thinking, wow, the kind of courage that woman must have had. I mean, this is a Hollywood actor.
Yeah.
You're coming here to clean the house and tidy up, and you sharing your faith with them. Yeah. And look what happened.
And she actually told him that she didn't come there to clean his house. She came there to tell him the gospel.
So she knew her assignment.
Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. How God can use anybody in any circumstance.
And he, Stephen, as a result, has had Hollywood turn their back on him largely.
Oh yes.
Because of his faith. So he's also in a way being persecuted in a different kind of way.
Yeah, I know his most famous brother, Alex Baldwin. They've made very derogatory comments about him and his faith. I've read about it because I met Stephen a few years ago in Washington, and but he's bold, like Kirk Cameron and other guys that got saved out of Hollywood.
Yeah.
There are quite a few of them that boldly sharing their faith and making waves.
Yeah.
And we thank God for people. It can't be easy.
Oh, well, they sacrifice their careers often.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when they do that.
And God uses them anyway.
Absolutely.
So this is a challenge then to the body of Christ, to the churches out there, to Christians out there. I think God is putting the focus back on evangelism in South Africa, that we need to get out of our churches and our comfort zones and share the gospel with people all over this country. That's what South Africa needs. We talk about the election is coming up, Bruce, and we need to get godly men and women elected into positions of authority and all of that. And that will help to a certain degree, but it's not going to change this nation, right? Yeah. It's the gospel of Jesus Christ and sharing that with people. That's the change in South Africa. So I want to give you the final word. Any information you want to share with viewers about the movie?
Well, we would love as many people as possible to see it. We think it's a blessing. It's an encouragement, and it's also good to know the true story of what happened with Graham Staines and his family. And we hope that it inspires each person that watches the movie to make changes in their life.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. I've seen the movie, my wife and I. It inspired and challenged us. We will not complain against any kind of hardship or challenges we face as Christians serving the Lord, because this family inspired us. This is true serving Jesus Christ.
And also, if we could bear in mind the millions of Christians around the world who do suffer for their faith.
All the time.
To less or greater degrees.
All the time.
And not forget them, but pray for them.
Absolutely.
And where you can, get involved.
Absolutely. Bruce Retief, thank you for coming in and sharing your insights about the movie. Thank you for what you do. And we will again encourage our viewers, please go out and watch the movie. See this movie, The Least of These, starring Stephen Baldwin. It's going to be released in South Africa in certain movie theaters across the country over the Easter weekend. So the website is on your screen right now. Go to it, get the information, and go see the movie. Good night. God bless you.